This is you, 34 years old. No LinkedIn profile, no tax returns filed under your real name, no apartment lease, no gym membership, no parking tickets. If you ran a background check on yourself right now, and you have, just to be sure, you'd find a pleasant fiction. A mid-level logistics consultant named David Mercer who lives in Zurich and enjoys hiking. David Mercer has a dental record and a modest savings account and 3 years of convincing email history. You are not David Mercer. You don't remember the last name you were born with. That's not a trauma thing. That's a Tuesday thing. The rain hammers the roof of a black Volvo parked outside a dry cleaner in Bratislava. It's 11:47 p.m. The dry cleaner closed 6 hours ago. But the light in the back room, the one that's not on any floor plan filed with the city, has been on since 9. You know because you've been watching. You've been watching for 4 days, living on protein bars and cold coffee and the particular kind of stillness that most people spend their whole lives running from. Your earpiece crackles once, just once. That's the signal. You step out of the car. Let's go back. Because you didn't start here in the rain, outside a dry cleaner that launders more than clothes. You started somewhere ordinary. Painfully, embarrassingly ordinary. You grew up in a mid-sized city in the American Midwest. Columbus, Ohio. The kind of place where ambition either calcifies into routine or burns you alive, trying to escape it. Your father worked shipping logistics. Your mother taught 3rd grade. You were good at school, not genius-level good, but quietly, dangerously observant good. The kind of student who aced tests without appearing to study because you absorbed everything around you like a sponge. Faces, patterns, exits. You always noticed the exits. You joined the army at 19 because college felt like waiting, and waiting felt like dying slowly. You were selected for intelligence work before you'd finished your 2nd year. Something in your psych evaluation flagged you as unusually suited for ambiguity. That's what the evaluator wrote. You still think about that phrase, unusually suited for ambiguity, like it was a compliment and a warning stitched together. You did 2 tours. You were good at the work. Too good, maybe, because the better you got, the less the official channels could contain what they were asking you to do. There's a ceiling in government service, a bureaucratic sky made of oversight and Senate committees and things that need to be on record. You kept bumping your head against it. Then a man named Hargrove sat across from you in a beige conference room in Fort Meade and slid a single sheet of paper across the table. No letterhead, no agency seal. Just 12 lines of text and a signature line at the bottom. What happens if I don't sign? You asked. Hargrove smiled like a man who'd heard that question 100 times. You go back to your unit, have a fine career, retire at 52 with a decent pension and a storage unit full of things you can't talk about at barbecues. You looked at the paper again. And if I do sign? Then you become very useful, he said, to people who don't officially exist. You signed. The first year was school, not the kind with classrooms exactly. Though there were rooms, sterile and windowless, in a facility outside of Roanoke that appeared on satellite maps as an agricultural research station. You learned languages. Not conversationally, operationally. The difference is that conversational French gets you a croissant. Operational French gets you in and out of a consulate in Lyon without anyone remembering your face. You learned chemistry. Specifically, the chemistry of things that stop hearts, blur memories, or accelerate both. You learned the architecture of lies, how to build a cover identity from the ground up, how to inhabit it so completely that the lie stops feeling like a lie and starts feeling like weather. Just something you move through. And you learned from the others. There were 6 of you in that first cohort. You never learned their real names? Nobody did. You learned their call signs, their habits, their tells. Moth was a former MI6 analyst who'd gone freelance before the agency scooped her up. Small woman, sharp jaw. She could read a room in 3 seconds and tell you who was sleeping with who owed money, and who was about to do something stupid. She had this habit of touching the inside of her left wrist when she was lying. Not her tell exactly, because she knew about it and used it deliberately to misdirect people who thought they'd spotted it. That was Moth. Layers inside layers. Rook was ex-Mossad, built like a question mark, all tension and angles. He didn't talk much, but when he did, you listened, because he'd usually already wargamed the conversation 3 moves ahead. He taught you how to kill quietly, not just the mechanics, but the mindset, the way you had to divorce the action from its meaning in the moment and let yourself process it later. Or not at all. Rook's eyes had the particular flatness of a man who had decided, very deliberately, which memories he was allowed to keep. Sable was South African. Former government, former private military, former something she never fully explained. She was the best driver any of you had ever seen. Not just fast, but intelligent, with a spatial sense that bordered on supernatural. She could parallel park a transit van in a 3-foot gap at 60 kilometers an hour while eating a sandwich. She was also the funniest person in the facility, which nobody expected. And the laughter, real laughter, stupid and sharp in those gray corridors, was sometimes the only thing that kept the whole endeavor from swallowing you whole. Cypher was the youngest, 26, Korean-American, with a computer science background that the agency had surgically redirected from his PhD program. He could ghost through any digital system with the patience of a man who understood that data, like people, always has a seam if you look long enough. He was quiet in a different way than Rook. Nervous quiet, not controlled quiet. But under pressure, something in him settled, like he'd trained himself to run cold when everything else ran hot. And then there was Voss. Voss was German, ex-BND. Tall, blonde, classical in a way that looked almost theatrical, like someone had described a spy to an artist, and the artist had taken too many liberties. He was brilliant, charming, magnetic, and the first person in your life you ever genuinely distrusted on instinct alone. Not because he did anything wrong. He was collegial, competent, funny in his own dry way. But there was something underneath the performance that never quite came into focus. An agenda you couldn't name. You filed it away. You always filed things away. The first real operation came 11 months in. A shipping magnate in Thessaloniki had been quietly funneling financial architecture to a network of stateless weapons brokers. Not selling guns himself, but building the invisible plumbing that let others do it without leaving fingerprints. The kind of man who attends charity galas and funds children's hospitals and is photographed with heads of state, while underneath, the plumbing hums. Your job wasn't to arrest him. Your agency didn't arrest people. Arrests required courts, courts required evidence. Evidence required a chain of custody that led somewhere official. An official was precisely what you were not. Your job was to dismantle the plumbing. You spent 3 weeks as a maritime insurance consultant. You attended 2 industry dinners. You had 17 conversations with people whose names you knew were false and whose eyes told you they knew yours was too. That mutual fiction that makes certain rooms function. You identified the 3 key nodes in his financial network. A lawyer in Rhodes, a banker in Cyprus, and an IT contractor in Sofia, who maintained the servers that held the architecture together. Moth handled the lawyer. She never told you how. She came back from Rhodes with a thumb drive and a bruise on her collarbone she didn't explain, and you didn't ask. Cypher ghosted the servers in Sofia from a cafe in Vienna. 4 hours, 2 espressos, 0 trace. The banker in Cyprus was yours. You sat across from him at a restaurant overlooking the Mediterranean. You were David Mercer, logistics consultant. He was a careful, frightened man who'd gotten in deep and knew it, and had been looking for a door for 2 years. You gave him one. Not out of kindness, out of utility. He handed you 3 years of transaction records in exchange for a new life in a country whose name you never learned. Whether the agency actually gave him that life, you chose not to investigate. The magnate's network collapsed in 10 days. He died 6 months later of a heart attack, which may or may not have been a heart attack. You flew home to the non-home that the agency maintained for you in Vienna and slept for 16 hours. When you woke up, there was a new file on the secure tablet on your kitchen table. The work continued. Back to Bratislava. Back to the rain. The dry cleaner's back room is a transit point for something the agency has been tracking for 8 months. A courier pipeline moving not drugs, not weapons, but people. Specifically, people who know things. Former intelligence assets being extracted from Eastern European services and sold, not to hostile governments exactly, but to a private intelligence consortium that the agency has been circling for 2 years without being able to name. They call it the Index. Nobody knows who runs it. Nobody knows the full client list. What they know is that 3 former NATO assets have disappeared into it in the last year, and that one of them, a retired signals analyst named Brower, had worked briefly on a compartment that touched the agency's own infrastructure, which means the Index might know the agency exists, which is, to put it mildly, a problem. Your mission is simple in the way that surgery is simple. Go in, extract Brower before the handoff, vanish. No footprint, no bodies if avoidable. The word avoidable doing significant heavy lifting in that sentence. Moth is on overwatch from a building across the street. Cypher is in a van 2 blocks east, inside every camera in a 6-block radius. Rook is your backup entry, coming in through the alley. Voss is the case officer running the operation from Vienna. You push open the dry cleaner's back door with your shoulder, a master key that Cypher cut you doing its quiet work. And you step into the smell of chemical solvent and old fabric and something underneath it. Fear sweat, the specific. Sour tang of a person who has been kept in a room against their will. Brower is zip-tied to a chair in the corner. 60 years old. Gray. Looking at you with the eyes of a man who has already made peace with several possible endings and isn't sure which one you represent. There are 2 men in the room who are not Brower. The first one reaches for his waistband. You close the distance in 2 steps, faster than he expects from someone your size. And hit his wrist before his hand gets there, redirect, elbow to the jaw, and he goes down with a sound like a bag of wet sand. The second man is smarter, already moving for the door, and you let him get to it before Rook steps through it from the other side, and the man walks directly into a forearm that stops him cold. 31 seconds from door to done. You cut Brower's zip ties. Who sent you? His German accent is thick. He's shaking, but his eyes are clear. Friends of people you used to work for. I worked for many people. The ones who are worried about you. He studies you for 3 seconds. The Americans. You say nothing, which is, in this context, an answer. The extraction goes clean. Too clean. You're in the van with Brower and Rook, moving through Bratislava's wet streets, and Cypher is ghosting your route. And everything is smooth, and that smoothness sits wrong in your chest like a stone. Operations don't go this clean. Clean operations mean either you're very good or someone wants you to succeed. You call Voss on the secure line. Package is secure, you say. We're moving to the bridge exfil point. Good, Voss says. His voice has its usual composed authority. Stay en route. You hang up. You look at Rook. Rook is already looking at you. Neither of you says anything. But you both heard it. That almost imperceptible thing in Voss's voice. Not quite relief, not quite satisfaction. Something that arrived a half second before you reported the package was secure, like he already knew. Change of route, you say to Sable, who's driving. Voss said, I know what Voss said. You keep your voice flat. Different bridge. Sable doesn't argue. She doesn't ask why. She just turns left instead of right, and you watch the mirrors, and Rook chambers around very quietly in the darkness of the van. And Brower, watching all of this, says nothing, because Brower is a man who spent 30 years in signals intelligence, and he can read a room. You're burned, he says softly. Maybe, you say. Not maybe. He looks at his hands. I know what a setup smells like. I've run enough of them. He pauses. You're a case officer. How long have you worked with him? Long enough. That's never long enough, Brower says, with people like that. You ditch the van near the train station and split into two pairs. You and Brower, Rook and Sable. Cypher stays ghost, running your digital cover from the van until the last possible second before he wipes it and vanishes. Moth, you haven't heard from in 4 minutes, which is 3 minutes and 50 seconds longer than comfortable. You're moving through a parking garage, Brower half a step behind you, when your earpiece comes alive. Moth's voice. Clipped, controlled. That specific quality she gets when something is wrong, but panic is a luxury she's declined. I've got 3 vehicles converging on the bridge exfil point. Not police, private plates. They're not there for traffic. There it is. The ambush that was waiting at the end of the clean operation. Moth, are you clear? For now. I've got eyes on a 4th vehicle that's been sitting outside your current position for... She stops. Moth. Silence. Moth. I see it, she says very quietly. I see it. There's a man in the stairwell of your garage, ground level. He came in 30 seconds after you. You stop walking. You put your hand on Brower's arm, and he stops too, reading you, not asking. You think, whoever is running this, whatever the index actually is, they don't just know about tonight's operation. They knew the route. They knew the exfil point. They knew your team's deployment. That level of penetration doesn't come from a surveillance operation. It comes from inside. Voss. It was always Voss. That thing you filed away 2 years ago, in a gray corridor in Roanoke. The agenda you couldn't name. You name it now. You pull Brower into a stairwell. Not the ground level one, the one that leads up. And you move, quietly, 3 floors, 2 floors, thinking, calculating. Because the thing about being unusually suited for ambiguity is that you don't freeze. You adapt. You take the information you have, as ugly as it is, and you build something from it. Your team is compromised. Your exfil is burned. Your case officer sold you to a private intelligence consortium that may or may not know your agency exists. What you have. Brower, your weapon. Cypher somewhere, in a van, still running dark. Rook and Sable. Moving to a secondary rally point you established, out of protocol, as a private habit, something you never reported upward because you never fully trusted upward. What you need? 20 minutes. You pull out a secondary phone, not agency-issued, your own, a precaution that would have gotten you reprimanded if anyone official knew about it, and send a 4-character text to a number only Rook has. RV2. Now. His response comes in 11 seconds. Moving. Good. Rook is alive. 8 seconds later, from Sable. A single period, which means understood, compromised, going dark. You look at Brower. He's breathing steadily. His hands have stopped shaking. You said you know what a setup smells like, you say. You ever walk out of one? He almost smiles. Twice. Tell me about the second time on the way, you say. We're moving. You come out of the garage through a maintenance exit that Cypher would have flagged in his initial survey of the area. You know his methodology. You could map his thinking in your sleep. And you move through an alley, then a courtyard, then through the back of a bar where the kitchen staff barely glance at 2 more faces in a city full of people moving through places they shouldn't be. The secondary rally point is a parking structure near the old town. 12 minutes on foot. You make it in 9. Rook is there. Sable is there. They have a car, not one of yours. One Sable found, which with Sable means legally ambiguous and operationally perfect. Rook has a cut on his temple that he hasn't bothered to address, which tells you they had contact and handled it. No Cypher. He went dark 8 minutes ago, Rook says. His voice carries the information without the emotion, which is how Rook delivers everything that costs him. He's protocol dark or unknown. You breathe. You file that too because you can't carry it yet. Not in the middle of this. Voss, you say. Rook nods once. He already knows. Of course he does. How long? Long enough to burn tonight? Possibly longer. You look at Sable. She's watching the garage entrance with a particular quality of attention that means she's already mapped 4 ways out of this structure. We need to move him. You nod at Brower. Whatever he knows about the index, that's the only leverage we have. Leverage against who? Sable asks. If Voss is Index, then Index has agency penetration, which means we don't have a home to go back to. She says it cleanly, without drama, but the weight of it lands on all of you. You don't have a home to go back to. The agency that doesn't exist, your agency, the thing you signed your name away for, the thing that became the skeleton of your life, has been compromised. Maybe for months, maybe longer. Every operation, every identity, every asset you've run through Voss's oversight, all of it potentially visible to something you can't yet see. Brower is watching you process this. Now you understand, he says quietly, why they wanted me so badly. What do you know about the index? You ask him directly. He's quiet for a moment, weighing something. Then, I know who runs it. The garage is silent except for the rain finding its way through the concrete gaps above. The name, you say. Brower tells you. You recognize it. And everything, every operation, every mission, every clean coincidence and lucky extraction and operation that went just smoothly enough, rearranges itself in your mind into a shape you should have seen years ago. The dry cleaner, the bridge, Voss, all of it. Not a penetration, not a mole who got lucky. A founding. The index didn't infiltrate your agency. Your agency was built by the index. You are sitting in a stolen car in a parking garage in Bratislava, and you are 34 years old, and your name is not David Mercer, and the organization you have spent 5 years killing and lying and becoming something else for does not officially exist. And now you understand that its unofficial existence was always in service of something you were never told about. Rook is looking at you. Sable is looking at you. Even Brower, who has been through his own version of this moment twice before, is watching to see what you do. Your earpiece, the agency one, the compromised one, crackles. Voss's voice, calm as a lake in January. "I know you're not at the bridge," he says. "I know you made Brower. I'm not angry. Honestly, I'm impressed." A pause. "Come in. Let's talk. This doesn't have to be what you think it is." You reach up and remove the earpiece. You hold it for a moment, this small piece of plastic that connects you to everything you were. And then you set it gently on the concrete floor of the parking garage. You look at Rook. "You still have that contact in Talon?" you ask. He nods. You look at Sable. "How far can you get us on one tank?" she thinks. "Depends on the tank." She looks at the car she acquired. "This one? Far enough." You look at Brower. "You're coming with us," you say. "Not as a package, as a source. You help us understand what we're dealing with. We help you disappear somewhere they can't find you." He studies you. "And if I say no? Then you walk out of this garage alone, in Bratislava, in the rain, and we see how long your luck holds." He nods. "Talon it is." You don't know what Cypher's silence means yet. You tell yourself it's protocol dark, that he's smart, that he's the best digital ghost you've ever worked with, and if anyone can vanish correctly, it's him. You tell yourself this in the way that you tell yourself many things in this work. Firmly, functionally, without committing to belief. Because belief in this life is a liability. What you have instead is forward motion, the cold arithmetic of survival and purpose. The knowledge that somewhere above you, above Voss, above the index, above whatever architecture was built around you without your knowledge, there is a truth that certain people need very badly to stay buried. And you have a name, and a stolen car, and 3 people who, for reasons of their own, have made the same choice you just made. To stop moving in the direction they were pointed, and to start moving in the direction that matters. The rain follows you out of Bratislava, drumming on the roof of the car as Sable threads through the dark streets with that quiet, extraordinary competence of hers. Rook rides shotgun, watching the mirrors. Brower sits beside you in the back, eyes closed, not sleeping. You can tell by his breathing, just conserving himself for what comes next. You look out the window at the wet city sliding past. You think about the man you were before Hargrove slid that paper across the table. The kid from Columbus, who always noticed the exits. You think about David Mercer in Zurich, living his pleasant, fictional life. You think about the name Brower gave you, and all the things it means, and all the things it's going to cost to do something about it. The highway opens up ahead of you, dark and straight, and Sable accelerates. And for a moment there is just the sound of the engine and the rain and the road. You are no one. You are everywhere. You are the agent of an agency that doesn't exist, running toward the truth of who built it and why, and what they intend to do with everything you helped them build. The exits, as always, are already mapped. You just have to reach one.